to a lifelong conservative from West Texas, an area that really is first affected by the influx of illegal immigration. You're basically the front line when you think about it.
That's right, and what's happened over the last at least 8 years of the Obama administration is we've been the only line in many respects, because our state has had to pick up the slack because the federal government has abdicated their responsibility to protect our sovereign border and to enforce immigration laws. So states like Texas have spent hundreds of millions of dollars doing the job of the federal government, and it's unfortunate. But as Texans, if we have to take matters in our own hands, we do. And but I think the good news is we've got a new sheriff in town as our new President Trump, who's, I think, absolutely committed. I know he's absolutely committed. I know because of his actions he's committed to making good on his promises. And that was to secure the border, stop illegal immigration.
And I want to give you credit, sir, because you were one of the first members of Congress to speak out in support of the President's executive order on the travel suspension that the Supreme Court has now, since after different versions, confirmed what we all knew already, that it actually was illegal and a valid action by the President. So, congratulations on speaking up on that. Did you get any sort of flack from anyone in House leadership or anything like that when you were standing up for the President's orders, or did they tell you to keep your head down or anything like that?
No, they didn't, and it wouldn't have mattered because this is about national security and public safety. We can debate about the role of the federal government. There are plenty of views. There are 434 other congressmen, probably 434 different views. One thing we can agree on is the first job of the federal government is to keep us safe. And this should have been no surprise to anybody. President Trump said that he was going to push pause and he was going to make sure that the controls were in place to protect us first. And so while we're a compassionate nation, we've got a big heart. I don't think anybody, if you measure in terms of what we've done for other countries worldwide over the years, there is not a more generous and compassionate country. But this is serious business, this whole refugee, the terrorism, the rise of terrorism, the infiltration of the refugees. Again, there are ways to do this. You create safe zones in the Middle East. We've done it before. But regardless of what the strategy is, the first point of the strategy ought to be make sure that our people are safe. And when you have the top officials in the CIA, FBI, and all the law enforcement guys saying, we can't vet these folks, you are derelict in your duty as the commander-in-chief if you don't hit pause. So yes, I'm grateful that the Supreme Court has confirmed what we believed were the rights and responsibilities of our commander-in-chief, and hope he continues to push that.
And you can walk around claiming that you were right all along. All along. The best thing to do in the halls of Congress, right?
Congressman, I love that you said sometimes Texans have to take things into their own hands, and I did see that the governor of Texas started making moves to combat sanctuary cities. I'm wondering, can we get some legislation passed through Congress to address this, or is it going to be, pipe dreams?
State by state, maybe is going to have to be. I don't know.
Well, we're voting actually today on the No Sanctuary for Criminals Act. And that's a step. It's a step, and let's hope we can get it out of the Senate. But we're going to get it out of the House. There's plenty of support. I think there's 80% support from the American people on making sure that we hold cities accountable by withholding grant monies to cities that are sanctuary cities. That's, again, a step, and I think it's the right step, just giving the administration tools to hold them accountable and to make sure there are consequences to bear for not enforcing the law. I don't even like the word sanctuary because these guys are we're a nation of laws, not of men. You don't get to make this stuff up. And that's what we've had for 8 years. And so that's this. The other thing it does is give the Secretary of Homeland Security the authority to not transfer illegal immigrants back to jurisdictions where they are sanctuary, whether it's state or localities where they are sanctuary jurisdictions. So, Texas just passed a law recently in this last session, and we only meet every other year, which is a great.
We've spoken about this,
which is a great model, by the way. If they're not meeting, they can't hurt you.
Love it.
But they passed a law that says because we had a rogue sheriff that was very prominent there in Travis County saying, I don't care what the law is, this is how we're going to conduct our business. That is anti-American, anti-rule of law, anti-constitutional, you name it, right? It's anarchy. That's where you go ultimately. The law in Texas will allow, that the governor signed will allow that person to be held liable and be arrested and removed from office. And I hope other states follow our lead.
Terrific.
Well, we know for sure that the People's Republic of New York City will not be following your lead. In fact, they're going the exact opposite way, with spending $50 million for New York City municipal IDs that illegal immigrants can apply for and obtain so that they can access city services. And
a push to have them vote in municipal elections, which is insane.
Yeah, there's a push, absolutely right. There's a push to create a separate ballot, which is almost like creating a second-class citizenry. It's not helpful to anybody. But what would be your message to people like Bill de Blasio in, like I said, the People's Republic of New York City?
Well, that we ought to all start at the same place when we have these discussions. Number one, we don't get to make up the laws.
Do you realize that by the time you would have said number one, you would have been accused of being racist, homophobic, elitist, and all types of different things before you even opened your mouth?
You're right. But we're going to try to win the hearts and minds of his voters.
How uncompassionate of you.
Yeah, well, look, here, I'll say this, too, and it's important as a conservative and as an American. This is a nation of immigrants. I'm proud it's a nation of immigrants. I want people hungry for freedom and opportunity here. We need that in the bloodstream. That is quintessentially American, but it's done legally. So is the rule of law, right? That's quintessentially American. And if we disregard the rule of law, then what do we have? If we don't defend our sovereign borders, what kind of nation are we? So, look, there are plenty of opportunities to look at reforms on the legal immigration side. I'm one that acknowledges that we should do that. I don't have any problem with that. But the first things first, stop the revolving door, stop catch and release, enforce the laws, secure the border, put the manpower on. It's real simple and straightforward. It's supply and demand. We have a better quality of life. There is a demand for better quality of life. As long as we offer that to non-citizens who are coming across illegally, they'll keep coming. You cut that supply off, then they'll get in line like everybody else. I think that's maybe an oversimplification, but I think that's kind of the straightforward path I see.
There was a lot of talk during the last presidential race of penalizing countries that would refuse to take back criminals that are here illegally. They got the deportation orders, and maybe the country doesn't want them back. What are some ideas floating around through Congress right now on what exactly to do to those countries? What kind of penalties can they face?
Well, I was in a discussion the other day where, we ought to, if we're doing anything in the way of financial support and with respect to diplomacy, we ought to dock that, and we ought to detain more. What the catch and release is. Folks are coming over and saying, I'm illegal. They're throwing their hands up because they know that by the time they get through the process to a deportation hearing, it's 3 to 5 years. So we don't have we haven't invested in the capacity. So logistically, they know that they're going to be released into the interior of the country. And I think we've got to make an investment there. But I would detain, if they're criminal aliens, I would put them behind bars and I would dock that country. And if that country didn't pay for the expenses of that, then there'd be consequences in that, and with respect to our relationship. So, America first.
Well, we're hearing a lot of good stuff today, Russ.
What
right?
it must be like to have a congressman that shares your own views.
What a concept, right? Yeah. We've been behind enemy lines literally so long that hearing things like this actually almost sounds foreign.
I almost don't believe it. Yeah.
It almost sounds foreign. Like, this is the country I want to live in. So, listen, one thing we must touch on. I know we're here for fair, but you are chair of the House Veterans Affairs Subcommittee on Economic Opportunity, and we should talk about the passing of the VA Accountability Bill. It seems like a great first step. I know that it's considered revolutionary, especially for the administration at the VA, but we need to start talking about what to do beyond that. I think, and there's a lot of veterans out there that are hurting, in part because there's such a drain on local governments from issues like immigration.
Yes. Well, let me kind of connect the two first and say that I voted and sponsored actually a bill that would streamline the ability. We're 1,000 people short of Border Patrol agents, 1,000. Talk about the front line of defense. It's the guys that lay hands on these folks. And we put veterans at the front of the line because of their pre-vetting. I think it's the right thing to do. So we need to create job opportunities for these guys. But since I've been on the VA, and I'm honored to be, I didn't serve in the military, and now I get to serve those who did serve, but I I will tell you that the heart of the problem, whether it's too long of a wait line to see a physician or a healthcare provider, or it's 450 disability claims in the rears, I could go on and on. It's broken. It's broken because it's a big bureaucracy. It's dysfunctional. At the heart of that dysfunction is the lack of accountability. Nobody in America gets to go to work and not perform and keep their job, except if you work at the VA and probably in other parts of the federal government. This gives the authority to the secretary and gives him the ability and the tools to remove poor performers and deal with people who are involved in misconduct. It's real straightforward. You'd think, a lot of this is just common sense, but it doesn't happen. I worked in the George W. Bush administration. It takes an act of Congress to get rid of somebody that's not doing their job. There's a new day at the VA. It's not the panacea, but I can tell you, at the heart of every problem that I've seen is the lack of a culture of accountability. This is a huge first step in that.
We're just about at halftime here on the show. I want to thank everybody for tuning into Behind Enemy Lines Radio. I'm Gene. He's Russ. And check us out at www.behindenemylinesradio.us. Check us out on the Facebooks and the Twitters at BEL_radio. And while we normally broadcast on Tuesday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern on Spreaker, if you miss any part of that, you can always check us out on any one of our rebroadcast outlets, including WJHC 107.5 FM in great Jasper, Florida. I'm using great a lot today. I think that's going to be the word of the day. WDDQ 92.1 FM in Adel, Georgia, and WLBB 1330 AM in Carrollton, Georgia, all a part of the Talk America Radio Network. You can also check us out at KLRN Radio Online, at High Plains Talk Radio and Sackheads Media, also ICRN, the Internet's conservative radio network that powers the Talk America Radio Network, and of course Lanterns Radio Online. Check them out at lanterns.buzz. But if you miss any of the rebroadcasts that are scheduled throughout the week, you can always check us out as a podcast. You can download us on Spreaker, TuneIn, Player FM, Podbay, iTunes, of course, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. We always love iHeartRadio. Google Play Music, Auto Radio, which is a new project of SiriusXM, and always download us on SoundCloud. People like that sort of stuff too as well. Back to the interviews here, Behind Enemy Lines Radio. Up next, Congressman from the state of Alabama, Mike Rogers. Gene and Russ, back behind Enemy Lines. The great guests keep on rolling in, Russ, from the great state of Alabama. It is a pleasure to welcome to the show Congressman Mike Rogers. Sir, thank you for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We're going to have what we're going to call the Battle of the Accents. Because between our Brooklyn and your Southern, we're going to make sure, and folks, if you want, we're going to make a transcript so everybody really understands what we're saying. But thanks for coming on the show. What a difference a year makes when it comes to immigration reform. Do you feel the difference in Congress compared to last year?
I do. And, I've been on the Homeland Security Committee since the committee was established, and we've seen a lot of ebbs and flows on this issue, but we actually have an administration now that's determined to help us seal the border, and that's encouraging for all of us.
And, of course, the news this week about President Trump saying that he will immediately sign Katie's Law and the No Sanctuary for Criminals Act. It's got to be encouraging to have someone in the White House that is ready to say unequivocally, this is important, this must get done.
Yeah, it is, and I think it's going to actually result in laws that are enforced for a change. That's one of the things we've had a problem with in the past is we've had laws that could be enforced and an administration that wouldn't do it. So when you look at the diminished numbers now of illegals coming across our border, it's just because we've got an administration willing to enforce existing laws. So these new laws we pass are just going to be icing on the cake.
Speaking of laws, sir, so the president has spoken about the wall, told us that Mexico is going to pay for it. I understand that you're working on a way to actually help that happen.
I've introduced a bill that would require a 2% remittance fee. Most people know what a remittance is, but basically if you're in this country and you want to send money out to another country, typically by wire transfer, that's a remittance. Well, anybody familiar with illegals know that the overwhelming majority of them send most of their money back home to their families. And what we have found is that there's $54 million a year that is remitted from the United States to South American countries, half of it to Mexico. So this 2% remittance fee would generate right at $1 billion. I said millions, I meant billions. $54 billion a year is remitted. This 2% fee would generate $1 billion a year. My bill earmarks it for paying for the wall. It won't pay for everything, but it will be a big step in that direction. And since half the money is coming from Mexico, it would comport with President Trump's pledge that he would make Mexico pay for the wall. So I think it's a great idea. The administration is actually considering it as one of their 4 options right now, and I think it will be part of the package they ultimately come with.
So it seems like the House has some sanity. But when these things get to the Senate, what happens over there where